Hello, who's there?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, hello. It's
Chris,
Piotr and Shooting is here.
Hi, Cynthia, and I'm here as well.
Chris, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, shall we start?
Yeah.
This is extraordinary. Conference call starting 2 minutes early. I've not done one of those ever before. Chris, just thank you so much for taking the time. A little bit of context. We have, as Book My Scan, we have been using Shooting and Pietro from the Cranfield Business School. They're doing an MSc in strategic marketing to look at the risk market for us. And what we've asked them to do is try and come up with the different segments as to what are the drivers of purchase decisions, mainly in the private sector. And bearing in mind that you have been around, the risk and tax market for many years, really appreciate the chance to sort of pick your brains and ask you some questions. So at that point, what I'll do is I'll hand it over to Pietro and Shooting.
Okay, fine.
And actually, because based on the rules from the Cranfield University, so we need to ask you, do you mind if we record the interviews?
No, of course, that's fine.
Okay, and all your personal or identifiable information will be missed. We won't write anything about that, like the company you work for or your name or something. Okay, is that okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, great.
I'm here, by the way.
Sorry?
I've joined you.
Okay.
Oh, Marcus, hello, well done. We've started.
Good.
Okay.
Hello. The first question is quite general. So we would like to know basically if you can pick up the 3 or 4 main considerations that you have in your mind to define the risk market. I mean, what are the 3, 4 main characteristics that you have in mind about the RIS market?
What do you mean by that? What do you mean? What are the main criteria? I think you need to perhaps be a little bit more specific. The use of the RIS is strictly connected with a PAC system and modalities. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you can describe a little bit more this relationship.
Oh, right, okay, all right. Well, in any given imaging department, whether it be a private institution or an NHS institution, the RIS is the system that is used to record the patient's attendance. It is used to record their movement through the radiology department, and it is used to capture the result of the imaging, the result of the investigation. So the RIS is often described as the workflow manager because it is the central system in a radiology department that everything else feeds off, if you like.
Okay.
So the RIS is connected to the hospital information system often. It is connected to the modalities, and it is connected to the PACS. So it is the hub. It is the central system from which everything else operates.
Okay, and I mean, we have noticed that you have many years of experience in a big company, and so do you ever notice any kind of relationship of a particular trend or connection between the kind of, say, the modalities, manufacturer, and some particular packs and rates? I mean, if I'm buying or I'm using a particular manufacturer modality, am I more? No. Okay.
No, not from a modality perspective. Typically, I can only really speak for the UK market. I have some knowledge of the global market, but most of my experience has been spent in the UK and in Ireland. Typically, the modalities are bought by one group of people within a hospital, and the packs and risks are bought by another group. Clearly, there is sometimes an overlap of those people, but the buying decisions are different, and the buying decision timescales are very different. A RIS typically might be installed for 10 years in a hospital, whereas the modalities are being changed every few years and new modalities are being bought, and new rooms are being added or discontinued all the time. So there is a constant buying cycle of modality, whereas the risk buying cycle is very different.
When you mentioned there actually are two group of people. So normally, who are involved in the group, like by the risk system?
Yeah. So the people that typically would buy a RIS system would be the RIS and a PACS manager. Now, depending on the hospital, that might be the same person, or it might be different people. The other people involved would be the radiology service manager, and the probably head of IT or someone in IT, and then almost certainly the chief financial officer of the hospital or the imaging center, and there will be radiologists' involvement as well to give their input as to their preference. Whereas the modality side, some of those people are the same, but not all, and the modality side is much more of a clinical-led decision by the radiologists and senior radiographers.
Okay, so actually, sometimes when we ask them, they will think the RIG system, the PAC system, and the practical information management systems, sometimes they work, but they overlap. Do you think it is possible to be overlap or not?
When you said, what do you mean by sorry, which systems are you talking about? You mentioned did you say a practical information system? What did you call it?
Practical.
The practice information, the practice management system.
Oh, practice management system. Okay, yeah. In a private hospital. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. What is your specific question? What are you asking me? Sorry.
These different kind of systems, do they overlap or not?
Yes, they do overlap, and in some situations, there have been organized. Let's say there have been companies in the past that have tried to combine one system, and it has, from my experience, I've never really seen it work terribly well, where you have one system that does everything. It's slightly different in the private sector, because you could have a private management system that might be able to do some risk functionality, and the risk might be able to do some of the practice management, and the PAC system might be able to do some of it. So there is definitely a bit of overlap, but historically they would always have been different systems.
Okay.
And that in itself creates challenges, because of course that means those three systems have to be integrated, have to work together.
Okay. So when you said that a sort of Unicum system doesn't work, or you have never seen it, so when you say that it doesn't work, means that every system has obviously its core functionalities. But what are your concerns about a Unicum system that can embrace all the base functionalities, and it's going to be very, very integrated with the PAC system?
Okay, so I think in my experience, what I've seen when people have tried to do this, end up doing is creating a system where, yes, it has most of the functionality, but it is usually missing some of the functionality from some of the best let's call them stand-alone systems. So you're normally asking a buyer to compromise on functionality on some area by buying a unified system. If you are saying you can create a unified system which has all of the best functionality of the best systems in one system, then of course that has a benefit. However, bear in mind, depending on the system and depending on how you do it, you might find that you are bringing more functionality than they need. It depends how your deliverables are, and how pricing is, because sometimes it's obviously easier to only deliver them a RIS system because from a perspective, you can remain more competitive than if you were trying to provide a complete system. But that was my only concern from what I've seen in the past. Any unified systems tend to lack functionality because they're trying to be too general and they're not specified enough. They're not specific enough with some of the key functionality needed by the individual systems.
Okay. All right. So as you mentioned, best functionalities or key functionalities. Can you give us, from your perspective, what are the core functionalities of an RIS system? We know that the work list is an essential feature of the possibility to register the patient. Besides that,
yeah, I think there are some functionalities that often get sort of forgotten, I suppose, by people that are trying to develop a system. So, for example, it is absolutely essential that any RIS system can deliver integrated voice recognition. And unless a lot of experience developing that, the detailed workflow to deliver voice recognition to a radiologist where it's not going to delay them in their reporting cycle is really quite challenging and quite difficult. So that's one area. And sometimes people say, oh, well, let's leave voice recognition to the PACS system. But that's okay only if the radiologist is happy to drive reporting from PACS and not drive reporting from the RIS. So that's one area. Another increasingly important area is analytics and the ability to create management and system reports from the RIS.
Bespoke reports.
Again?
Bespoke reports.
Yes, exactly. So ad hoc reports, exactly. And that should be available for any database item. So as a RIS manager, I should be able to write any query I want to with a very user-friendly front end without having to understand SQL or database language. I should be able to write an ad hoc query that tells me how many reports have been done by a radiologist with this name on this date by this referral source, however I want to cut the data. And that is an area that is often left out or is not as good, let's say, as it should be. And one other key element that often gets forgotten upon modality work list. So again, one of the key functionalities is when you register a patient in the RIS and you record that they are going to be booked in for a chest X-ray. When they arrive in the department, then the RIS system should send to the chest X-ray machine the patient's information, so that when the radiographer takes the image, the patient's information is automatically recorded against the image. And that's, as you may know, is called DMWL or DICOM modality work list. And that is a critical function. It can be done by external systems, but in the UK it is nearly always done by the RIS.
Okay. When you said before about the possibility to query the server without obviously be a master in SQL,
Yeah.
do you have any idea of a user-friendly software that is delivering this kind of function? I mean, some system that you say it is very easy to use for.
Okay. So most good RIS systems have that functionality built in.
Okay.
It's not a party product. It's part of the RIS function. It is obviously possible to buy in a third-party product. Normally that involves third-party licensing. It involves and another integration. And in my experience, those off-the-shelf third-party report things like Crystal reports, for example, they have two problems. One, they are very expensive to buy in, and number two, they are usually not medical specific. They are normally a generic management report writing tool. They're not great at querying a medical database.
Okay. And we know that some RIS system they're not giving you the possibility to access from so remote access and to doing the report. So I have one question. It's not usual. So I know that in order to write down a report, you have to look at the image that has been taken, and the monitor is playing a crucial role in that because medical. So how do you think? Is it possible to balance remote access for report with the lack of? If I'm reporting from my laptop, my laptop, I don't have maybe a medical monitor with me.
Yeah. So yes, it is possible to balance that, and we'll find it depends on the hospital on what their view of that is, and it depends on what sorts of images are being reviewed. The Royal College of Radiologists gives guidelines as to what the monitor should look like. In my experience, there are many hospitals and many radiologists reporting from home using an on-call laptop. And that is because...
Sorry, we didn't catch the last word. So you say that they are reporting from home with a software called?
No, sorry, from home using an on-call laptop. So in other words, hospital has provided them with a laptop that they take home when they are working on call.
Okay.
Okay.
And the reason they do that is because they do not want people working from home using their own devices, because their own device cannot be used for patient data. So they give them a laptop to carry home. That will probably have VPN software on it so that they can integrate directly into the hospital systems from home. And it is a controlled environment, if you like. The issue of is, as you say, they will not be using a medical grade monitor, but when they are on call, normally the on-call purpose is to write a preliminary decision around emergency care. So in that situation, the medical grade monitor is not critical.
Okay.
Now, a slightly less usual scenario in the same way as if they are reporting in the hospital. So a normal report of normal in that scenario, yes, they would normally be provided at home with a monitor or two monitors that are the same as they have in the hospital. So they effectively have a replication at home of their workstation that they have in the hospital.
Okay. So going back to the market. So we were talking before about a market segmentation, and St. John said about benefits sought. So from your experience, what would it be the more effective way to segment a market? I mean, we can look at private and NHS, big and small clinics, but from your idea, a useful way to segment the market.
Why are you wanting to segment the market?
Yeah, I mean, among all the possible ways to segment it, so do you have a particular one that you can suggest?
Well, yeah, all you can do is say, I guess, between private and NHS. I can't think really of any other way. I mean, the NHS hospitals you could segment, I suppose, as well into large and small NHS trusts, but it all depends, as I say, on why you are segmenting the market. If you're looking for a specific type of institution with specific criteria, because that is the market segment you want to approach or to address, then you would perhaps segment the NHS hospitals by the number of radiology exams that they perform per year, because that is normally a good indicator of how big they are and therefore how advanced or sophisticated their RIS and PACS requirements would be.
Is it
in the private sector, Chris? I mean, isn't there one obvious segmentation where you've got either standalone or a couple of small clinics versus a large private hospital or a large private hospital group?
Yes, I guess. Yes, of course, I guess so. But there are, as you know, only a handful of private hospital groups, I suppose. So yes, I suppose that's a fair argument. Obviously, private hospital groups, in my experience, also operate in one of two ways. They either have a central set of infrastructure, like a central RIS, a central PACS, that is then distributed down to the individual sites, or they allow each individual site to purchase and use a local-based system.
Fine, thank you.
And obviously that completely depends on what their IT infrastructure is, because many of these private hospital groups do not have an IT infrastructure that is shared across the whole of their estate. Normally these are standalone imaging centres, and therefore it wouldn't be possible to provide a centralised imaging system.
Actually, is it common that the companies or suppliers will segment the market?
Well, yes, I guess that's an impossible question to answer, because I don't know, but in my experience, there is a bit of segmentation that happens. But
Okay, and I mean, have you ever noticed? Hello?
Yes.
You there?
Hello, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. We lost you for 1 second. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
So, in your experience, can you recall a situation in which the segmentation was done poorly? I can say, and you have experienced the effect of a full segmentation. So we can state that segmentation is a really crucial part of before going to the market to propose a product.
I think one of the it depends. If you're looking at I can only really speak. I think the only example I can think of is on the NHS side, and that is people often naively, when looking at the NHS, look at individual hospitals and not realizing that many hospitals often are part of a central trust. So there's an NHS that has multiple hospitals within it, and therefore it would be foolhardy and a waste of time to be approaching those individual hospitals. You need to address and approach them at a trust level and determine which is the largest organization, because normally there is one that is the big hospital in a trust, and that is the hospital where they will be having the buying decisions. That would be the only piece of advice. But from a private sector, I couldn't say.
Yeah, thank you. And so, if you think about the competition in the risk market, we know that there's always two possibilities to enter into the market. To enter into a market with an existing product. So I'm not really entering into the market, but I'm developing an existing product with new features. So basically, I'm pumping it with functionalities and features, or trying to bring to the market a new product. So considering the UK market, so do you think that there is still space for a new product, or the competitors that are already there, already playing in the market, they are saturating it, so that's all. There's no more space for something, and they're going to build that RIS system, and they have the total share market?
I think for quite some time there has been space in the market for a new risk, and I would still believe that to be the case. There is space for. Now is a very good time to be trying to build some risk business in the UK, and that is because historically, as you probably know, there have been in the last few years 2 risk companies in the UK, HSS and Soliton. HSS have been continually losing a lot of business, and most of that business they have lost has been won by Soliton. So we are rapidly approaching the point where Soliton is not only the major vendor in the UK, but will potentially be the only serious vendor that anybody is considering to buy from, unless they are a very long-standing HSS customer and a very long-standing happy HSS customer, and that would be unusual. So anybody who is looking to buy a system typically is buying from Soliton. I'm not seeing much else happening. There is absolutely time ready, if not been for some time, for another vendor. I'm also seeing Soliton beginning to struggle with their ability to deliver all of the projects that they are winning. So they've got to the point where they have become a victim, beginning to be a victim of their own success.
Okay. So HSS is a well-being software.
Yes, correct.
Okay. I will try to get the brands. And so in terms of, just to conclude, in terms of future forecast and future trends, what are your perspective of this market? I mean, in terms of, for instance, new functionality, new expectations from the companies. I mean, from the user's point of view, what do you think we're gonna see in the next 5-7 years?
I think we'll see probably a few things happening. I think analytics will become ever increasingly important as we try and become more and more efficient processes. So I think analytics and that management reporting thing I was talking about earlier, I think that will become increasingly important. The next big thing which we're already seeing is artificial intelligence. So that is already coming in. It's not a risk functionality. It tends to be an external product. But what we're seeing is that there is a lot of interest from radiologists around the country and around the world. But what they're already talking about is how AI will integrate into their reporting process. And what they're talking about is how, if AI identifies an abnormal patient, how that means that creates a flag that is then identified within the work list so that the radiologist knows to prioritize. So I think we're absolutely starting to see that happen. That will become very, very important. The other major trend that people have talked about for years, and we are seeing a very slow uptake in this country, and we're seeing more uptake globally, and that is where the RIS is being delivered as part of the bigger EPR, electronic patient record system. So this would be a system provided by Cerner, Change Healthcare, Epic, these huge hospital-wide systems. And I think the way it is inevitable we will see a trend for standalone RIS to slowly disappear and eventually for it to become part of this bigger system. But I think probably in the UK, decades away from that really truly having an impact, because in the UK the RIS functionality is so developed that no EPR company has been able to match the level of functionality. So most radiology departments in the UK are very resistant to the idea of having an EPR system, because it will take away some of their RIS functionality.
Okay. And I mean,
it will be a slow future trend.
Okay. So you mentioned that there are a lot. I mean, that the UK market is quite peculiar in its way.
Yes.
For the risk. So can you tell us briefly if you know the main differences? I mean, why you're saying that it's peculiar compared, for instance, to the Europe market? I mean, I don't know if it is a Europe market or it's a country market. I mean, it's a market country by country.
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think the UK has had a very, very well-established RIS market, and there has been a huge amount of product development within the UK over the last 20, 30 years. And that has led to UK RIS standalone companies providing really some excellent functionality that we have not seen in many other countries. Obviously, in the US market, they have a very different marketplace. They have standalone imaging centers. It's a very different place. And in the European countries, again, they have a far less well-established local homegrown based system. So that's one reason. But I think also increasingly in the UK, there have been several attempts in the past, over the last 10 years, for these big American EPR systems to come in at huge expense and to provide or try and replace the local RIS with a central hospital RIS, if you like, that's part of the EPR system. And wherever they've tried, it's usually failed in as much as the American RIS module as part of the EPR has just not been up to the level of the UK developed RIS. So people that have been used to that very high level of RIS functionality in the UK are not happy to accept clearly going backwards and taking a system where the functionality is less.
Okay. To paraphrase, so you're saying that in UK they are preferring something like an agile system rather than a big but static system, right?
Exactly.
And
that's very. Sorry, Karen.
No. Please go on.
I was going to say that's quite a selfish view of radiology in the UK, because there are many benefits to having a centralized big system, but they are used to using a local RIS. They are used to having a relationship with a local RIS provider, and they just do not want to, in most cases, move away from that to a larger system.
Okay. Good.
Actually, because we nearly finished the general questions, so come to the specific questions. Because you used to work in GE as a rigs and PACS manager, what do you think about GE's rig systems? Are there customers like target on NHS, big hospital, or like small private clinic?
Okay, so yes, I sort of can talk about this now, not now that I'm not working for GE.
Yes.
The GE RIS system is no longer going to be sold within the UK. Because there are too many problems, and there have been too many customers that are very unhappy with the product from a stability perspective, from a performance perspective. So the decision was made a few months ago that we would not sell the RIS.
Okay. When you mentioned too many problems, can you describe some problems you think are the biggest?
As I said, not specific, because I wasn't particularly involved with any of those customers. But from what I heard, it was stability and performance. So the systems were not reliable, would regularly not be available, and if they were available, the speed and performance was not acceptable to the customer.
Okay.
Is these systems the customer they target before? Is it only NHS?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And that's because it's a big system. It's an expensive system. It's probably far too big a system and too expensive a system to be used by a relatively small private hospital.
Okay.
And probably, lastly, and not flexible enough.
What do you mean with flexible?
As in, like a lot of big systems, you work in one way, and your users have to use it in a certain way. In my experience with private hospitals, every private hospital has a slightly different workflow, and any system that's installed there needs to be highly adaptable and configurable to fit the workflow of that hospital, of that private place.
Okay.
So typically GE systems, whether it be RIS PACS or advanced visualization systems, they work in one way and one way only.
Okay, so no customization.
Well, some, but not as much as many people would like, particularly in that small private sector.
Yeah, so features customization rather than workflow customization.
Yeah.
So So actually, because you mentioned a few months ago, they decide to not propose these systems anymore. It means, is that possible? GE may work with other companies, or they may redesign a new systems, or just maybe work with some smaller companies to get a new rig systems, or not?
Not so. Yes, working with other companies, but not to develop another system, but to partner. So if they are bidding for a pack system, customer also wants to buy a RIS system, then they will partner with another RIS provider, and their preferred RIS provider in the UK is Soliton.
Okay.
Sorry. Say it again. They prefer provider in UK.
Soliton.
Okay.
It's Soliton, yeah.
So their idea, so GE idea is to partner with Soliton for the RIS.
In the UK, yes.
In the UK, yeah. Okay. So partnering with local well-established company that they already possessing a considerable market share.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And
Guys, I think we better wind up. So can you last couple of questions and then let Chris go?
Okay.
So when you mentioned GE is going to partner with Soliton, but do they change their target market? Are they still target on the NHS?
Yes. They're not changing their target market.
Okay.
Okay, so from our side, we don't have any more questions. If St. John or Max, if you do have any questions.
I'm fine. Chris, I just had to say thank you very much. It's lovely to have the chance to sort of pick your brains and get your views. So really appreciate it. So thank you.
You're very welcome, and apologies it's taken a few attempts, St. So, no, you're very welcome. Very welcome.
Okay. Thank you. We'll be in touch, and good luck with your new business.
Yes,
thank you.
Very busy on.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. You're welcome. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
St. John?